First step to installing cabinets is obviously to unpack your tools. So the installers get started with a little showmanship and bring all the necessary equipment they're going to need to install the kitchen. A couple of bags full of cordless tools, a chop saw, an air compressor, a portable table saw, a ladder, some various hand tools that they'll use to install the kitchen. Once the tools are unpacked and the cords are all run, the air lines are all run, and they got a pretty good game plan, this kitchen is already unboxed. The cabinets have already been unboxed and inspected. They lay out the wall cabinets up against the wall per the plan in the general area where they're going to. The refrigerator line in this house comes off of an interior wall, and a pantry cabinet is in the corner. In the state of Georgia, the fridge line cannot be on the exterior wall, which is that back wall where the wall cabinets are actually being hung, so that's why it comes off the side. The base of the utility cabinet or pantry cabinet is then cut around the 2x4, and the water line that will go to the refrigerator, a hole is drilled and the base is set. Next, both installers will kind of manhandle the pantry cabinet. One installer can do this, but because there's two on this job, it just makes sense for two to do it, where one holds it up and the other installer kind of guides that refrigerator water line or ice maker line through the hole that was drilled in the bottom of the utility cabinet. In the winter time, these pipes can be brittle, so you have to be careful and just slide that utility cabinet right onto the base. The next step is to just simply screw the utility cabinet to the base. One thing the installer could have done in this case is he can level the base or the toe kick before putting this cabinet on top of it, and then he wouldn't have to level it afterwards. But here he just chose to set it on the floor, and then he'll use some cedar shims and then just level the entire assembly before he screws it to the wall. So here he's just using the shims and his little pry bar, and he just looks up at his torpedo level that's up on the top of the cabinet, and he just levels the cabinet. Check it from side to side, and then also from front to back before he actually screws it to the wall. Up that other cabinet that attaches to the utility cabinet is he wants to draw a nice level line, which would be the top of the cabinet, and he wants to find where the studs are. Here he's measuring the length of that cabinet, and now he'll just use his hammer and pound and find the studs, marking the wall so that he can see it after the cabinet is hung. He can see where the studs are. The next cabinet that he's going to hang in the line is just a standard wall cabinet. He uses his handy helper there. It's just a 2x2 cut into a T. The cabinets are 54 inches off the floor, 54 and a half if he had to account for any kind of hardwood floor. And then he just simply screws it together and also screws it to the wall. The T helping hands some installers will put a piece of carpet on the top of that T, but all it does is holds it. It helps him to hold it in place, gravity and the weight of the cabinet, and it really helps the installer just get that cabinet on the wall. Again, you can see the level at the top of the cabinet, ensuring that as he goes down the run that he's nice and level. It's important that all cabinets are level. What he's doing is measuring from the side of the cabinet that he's already installed, and the line that he drew at the top, which is level, he marks on there, and he's looking for a stud, and he marks the dimensions, and he will just transfer that onto the cabinet on the floor as he cuts the holes. Having trouble finding some studs there, aren't you, Armando? There's at least one we know of, because that outlet is always attached to one.
Yeah, just one.
I don't know.
Putting a hole in the drywall and reaching your finger will cover that, but that's a technique that's perfectly acceptable. Here he's transferring the electrical outlet, drawing nice straight lines with his torpedo level, and he'll cut that out. He's already transferred. He's looked up at the wall. He's transferring the information that he already measured. Also, you can see the slash marks where he did find the stud, and he's just going to cut out these the holes for both these. The outlet and the pipe, the exhaust pipe. Just going to freehand that circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. The heating and air guy that hooks up that exhaust fan, he'll use a special kind of tape that really just covers up all that. It seals it. Here he just uses a skill saw to do the plunge, a plunge cut. If you do that right, you don't even, on the inside of the cabinet, you won't even see the saw blade marks. Here he's just using a portable jigsaw. He drilled a pilot hole first, and he's using a portable jigsaw to just cut out that hole that he hand drew into the position of the back of that cabinet. And now he'll just screw that Lazy Susan cabinet to the sink base. Again, there's no sides to the cylinder type Lazy Susan cabinet, so there's a couple of different steps to get this thing right where you want it, get that sink base where you want it. Had that just been a square cabinet or a cabinet that had walls, some other kind of corner cabinet, he wouldn't have had to use that other drawer base. He could just simply start in the corner with that cabinet and work his way out. He makes sure that the face frames are nice and flush when he screws it in. He does it quickly, but corner here the line is exactly lined up to the top of the wall cabinet where that range space is going. Here he's just using the drawer base that's going to the end of the run. He needs a cabinet with the side of the wall so that he can transfer all the information from the plumbing pipes in the sink base over to the bottom of the sink base cabinet. So that cabinet that's over there now is not the cabinet that's actually going in there, but he's just using it to, so he has his tape measure. He can actually butt it up against right where he marked on the wall where that cylinder or Lazy Susan cabinet will be. And here he's just transferring all the dimensions. He could have brought that sink base a little closer to him if he wanted to. He wouldn't have to walk as far, but he's a professional and he's getting it done. An important step here is he's just going to use the pilot hole through his paddle bit, and he's going to drill through and locate so he can spin the cabinet around. If he was to drill that all the way through, he would tear out the inside of the cabinet. So he just wants to know where those holes are, flip it around, then use his paddle bit for the two water lines. He's even scoring the drain pipe where he's going to use his hole saw. Just so it doesn't tear the paper on that particle board. And that's going to line up perfectly if he transferred his dimensions properly. The hole saw is 2 1/4 inch, the pipe is 2 inch, and the 3/4 inch water line uses a 1 inch paddle bit. Here he's locating the back of the cabinet where that wire is going to go through. That is for a garbage disposal. Again, he'll drill with the pilot hole and then return back to the face of the cabinet not to tear out any of that paper. And he drills the hole. And now he's ready to mount that cabinet. before he does, he decides he's going to drill, just as he did with the wall cabinets, he's drilling a pilot hole in all the face frame to face frame assembly. So that's going to reduce splitting, and the self-tapping screws that screw the face frames together, the hardwood, he just wants to make sure that those go in smoothly and doesn't crack. Here he's pulling the wire that will be used for the garbage disposal, and then just dropping the cabinet in on top of those lines. Again, he wants to make sure that he's kind of holding it up with his knees right now, and then locating it. In the wintertime, you do have to be careful that polybutylene plumbing, those water lines do have pressure in it. You don't want to split the water line. Water would go all over, so he's just being careful to put that in there. And he transferred his dimensions correctly, and he stapled that on. And he just uses 2x4s in his nailer, his concrete nailer, which is just drives a concrete nail into that 2x4. He could make that 2x4 as long as it needed to be, where the island wouldn't go back and it wouldn't slide or adjust. That's a step that that he could have done, but might be that he just found a scrap piece of 2x4 out in the garbage that wasn't long enough. So he's just going to shoot that, and he backs off the line that he drew, the thickness of the side of the cabinet, because the cabinet has to actually fall right on top or inside the 2x4. He also marks the floor so he can see how long the 2x4 is after he puts the cabinet in place. Drills a pilot hole like he did before. Starts it from the bottom, finishes it from the top so he doesn't have tear out, and then just drops the island into place. The islands will be screwed. Looks good. The concrete was pretty good in this house. The screw will go nice and low to the ground so that the quarter round will cover the screw. He wants to also make sure that it's flush. He'll drive that right in. He's already screwed in this other side. And you can see the 2 screws, 4 screws total, and between the marks, and that island won't move. Now he's paneling the back. He has to cut that panel to fit. He wants a nice tight, nice clean fit. That raw wood that you see on the edge of that panel is going to be covered by some outside corner mold. But here he just wants to make sure that he staples it probably every 4 to 6 inches all the way around the perimeter, just so it doesn't bow or heat. If he put some glue on there, some liquid nails, he wouldn't have to worry about that, but rarely do they do that, so he'll just make sure he staples it all the way around the perimeter. The other installer is now done with the baths in this house. He was installing the hall bath and the master bath, so now he's back and he will start working on drilling for holes and maybe some toe kick while this installer finishes up a little bit of the trim. Installers working on drilling for knobs. Most installers don't need to measure the center to locate where the knob goes. They can go ahead and just use their tape measure for distance. You can kind of eyeball where it goes in the center. And this knob, this particular knob, you have plenty of play. The base of it is so wide that if you had to make an adjustment, if you drilled it a little off, it wouldn't be a problem finding the center. The drawer fronts, actually, you need to measure both directions. You need to measure from side to side and up and down. You could eyeball it, but that's kind of risky. Installers don't want to have to pay for new drawer fronts if they misdrill. It's important to use a nice sharp bit and to let the drill do the cutting so you don't get any blowout out the back of the doors and drawers. Here he's just opening up all the packages of knobs and separating the screws, and then he'll go ahead with all the holes already drilled. He'll go ahead and put all the screws in and just walk around the kitchen, put all the screws in first. And then with a handful of knobs in one hand, his screwdriver or cordless screwdriver in the other, and the screws are already in the hole, he can walk around and just simply screw all the knobs on. It's a pretty quick process. To both the left and the right. I start at the end and work my way to the other end, but this just there's no right way or wrong way. It's just a personal preference. Most installers do not need to use their torpedo level or to tell where to install this. You're just making sure that the reveal is exactly the same on both sides of the cabinet. It's more of an eyeball thing. The straighter and more level it is, obviously, the easier it is. The saw only knows to cut things square as long as you have it up against the fence and the base of the cabinet square. So the joints will be nice and tight as long as you install it nice and square. This piece looks like it's just a sliver too long, so the installer will take it back to the chop saw and take off about a half a blade. Crown molding takes time. The more you do it, the better you get at it. It's just more of the finesse part of the install. Now he's got a nice perfect fit. See how that scribe kind of holds up the bottom of that crown for him? It's like a little shelf or helping hands. And then he just shoots it all in place with some brad nails. You're not trying to hold up the house. It's decorative, so you just want to use a small nail, a small brad nail, put in a small hole. Remember, every time you shoot a hole, it's got to be filled, so don't go crazy with that nail gun. He just goes ahead and makes all his cuts. One technique that's good to do once you cut this kind of finished product is to color the ends just a little bit with a marker that's the color of the cabinets, and then when you put those joints together you don't need as much putty. He didn't do that over at the other joint that he already put together, but I asked him to do it in this case just so I could show that technique, which is pretty good. This is maple crown, so it's very white or blonde in color. Here he's on that utility cabinet. Again, he's just attaching that face mount. I asked him to put the torpedo level up there just so for people that can't eyeball it. And that's how you would do it. You just use your torpedo level and put it at the top of that crown, and you can ensure that you're nice and straight. It's really unnecessary if you do this a lot because you can eyeball it. Again, some pieces need to be trimmed, so he'll just go back to the saw and trim it. This is that longer piece. He's trying to get a nice tight fit. Anytime, this is one of the problems with working your way from the center out. If you go from left to right or right to left, you don't have this issue. Now he's kind of put himself in a pinch where he's trying to get two angled cuts to fit properly. The other installer's working on that toe kick, which is just pieces of flat board that will cover the bottom of the cabinets, and he'll staple it as low as possible. Looks like he's putting in a lot of nails, and as high as possible. He does that pretty quick, but those nails won't have to be filled. Here he's just using his putty and his rag, and he's filling all the nail holes that on the outside corner mold. He's also coloring the ends of the toe kick because it's raw material. He wants that to match, and he'll just wipe off the excess with his rag. Armando's still working on that crown. If he would have worked from left to right, it wouldn't have been as hard, but he's got himself in a pinch. And after that's done, Carlos will go ahead and he's starting to fill some nail holes. The other installer, Armando, is going ahead and putting the shelves in. All the shelf clips had to be put in as well. That's another step. And he's just touching up anything he sees. He just touched a little bit of the back of where the knob was drilled. You might get a little blowout, so he used his little bit of putty and touched the back of that knob just to fill that. screw hole. It's an important step. It's tedious, but it's important to fill all the nail holes, to check to make sure that it looks good, that the joints are tight, and to place all the shelves in the cabinets. Shelves are adjustable in this cabinet. Rarely do people actually move their shelves. They'll probably be there for the duration that someone's in this home. Here the utility shelf goes in as well. That's also adjustable. Next step is just leveling all the doors and making sure the drawers are working properly. Here he's just unscrewing the hinge just a little bit and then screwing it back in to drop it down. He uses his torpedo level just to make sure it's nice and straight, and you can adjust them by just giving it a little tap if you didn't horse it down and screw it. It's nice and straight and it opens properly. And that is pretty much it. Now the installers have the tedious task of picking up all their tools and repacking and taking care of the trash. This install from start to finish, even with me videotaping, took approximately, these two experienced installers, about 4.5 hours. That was already unboxed and inspected because this is their actual second install for the day. That probably took anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. So probably from start to finish, from tools, from curb to curb, it's about 5 hours for these two guys. And here you can see the finished product. All the knobs are in place, it's been cleaned, everything's level and square and true. Cabinets on the inside have been cleaned out. Plenty of screws, wall cleats, we watched that. Doors and drawers have been adjusted, all the nail holes are filled. These are kind of the things that the field rep will be looking for when he does his quality inspection. And it's a good install. This 100% complete. There was no damaged cabinets, and everything went in well per plan, and it looks good. And that concludes this kitchen install video. If you have any questions or comments, please do so in the comment section, and thanks for watching.